Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's event, Enforcing Your Social Media Policy Inside and Out, how Oro Valley, Arizona gains peace of mind through social media archiving. So my name's Morgan Wright. I'm a senior fellow here for government technology. I'm also the chief technology cybersecurity analyst for Fox News, Fox Business, and SiriusXM. But anything around technology, I love this kind of stuff, and you guys, you're going to love this today. But first of all, I just want to say I'm your moderator today. Just want to say thank you for joining us. We're going to have some fun over the next 60 minutes. But before we begin, just a couple brief housekeeping notes. This webcast is designed to be interactive, so anytime we've got Q&A down there, folks, please send us questions. We love those. We're going to tee those up for questioning. In case you ask, we will send out a link to this recording. It'll be emailed to everybody within 48 hours, so you can use it for your reference, but more importantly, pass it along to the people who couldn't be here today. And also, please send in your questions as they come up through the presentation. We'll get to as many of those as we can at the Q&A portion, which will be at the last 10 minutes. Hey, and if you also want to download a PDF of the slides today, you can do so by clicking on the Webinar Resources widget down at the bottom of the console. Now, during today's webinar, hey, throw some shout-outs on LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, use the hashtag GovTechLive, and, share some information with your folks. Drive them here to this webinar. We'd love more folks to attend. Now, important thing for us is at the close of the webinar, we'd like you to complete a brief survey about the presentation. We'd love to hear what you think, and if you're unable to stay with us for the entire webinar, please at least complete the survey. Your feedback has actually led to some changes that we will be rolling out here towards the end of the month. So your survey or your information, your feedback is very valuable to us. So at this time, hey, disable your pop-up blockers. If you're experiencing any media issues, we've got the folks, Jasper from On24 and our crack technical staff here to help you folks and enjoy this. And there's also a webcast help guide down on the bottom. So, hey, but let's get to the fun part. Let's talk about who we're going to have today. So we've got three of us here today. I'm going to be your moderator. We're going to have Pia Salonga from the town of Oro Valley, and then we'll be followed up with Anil Chawla, who's the founder and CEO of ArchiveSocial. But first, what I want to do is let me set the stage a little bit. So here's our agenda for today. We're going to go through these things. I'm going to give you just a little bit of an overview by the numbers. Pia's going to come on and talk about enforcing your social media policy inside and out. This is very interesting, folks. I think you're going to enjoy this. And then Anil's going to come on and talk about the critical need for agencies to archive their social media. And if you don't think archiving social media is important, recent events from everywhere from Orlando all the way back to natural disasters to Texas and other places tell you about the importance of archiving these things. Now, I have to tell you, when we first did this webinar and I was talking to Pia, and so my first thing was, wow, this is what I first thought it was like until I realized this is what your golf courses look like. So I've got some friends who want to play those golf courses, so kudos, it looks very nice. So as I said, here's my name, Morgan Wright. What that is, that's represented in binary, because really what we are here to talk today is all of those unseen ones and zeros. The important things, you have the message, but it's what's behind the message, the important things that we're going to tell you about the things that you need to archive. So let's dive into this. Let's talk about social media by the numbers. And there's only three numbers I'm going to talk about, obviously 1, 2, and 3. So let's talk about the first one. The first one is a very important one, and this is really what gets to the heart of social media, and that's the First Amendment. We're going to talk about some of the issues that are out there. We're going to talk about how you're going to address does everybody have the right to put anything on your social media page, on Twitter, on Facebook? Is there anything you can do about it? What are the limits of free speech or First Amendment when it comes to social media? These are very thorny issues that our presenters are going to dive into. Now, the second thing we want to talk about, maybe it goes together like salt and pepper. I think it does. And in our surveys at the Center for Digital Government and Government Technology, where we've gone out and surveyed not only the stakeholders and the citizens, but the government itself, we said, what are two of the key issues that you're attempting to address, two issues that are top of your list? And they always come back in, whether it's body-worn cameras, social media, governance, policy, finances, it's transparency and accountability. So we're going to show you how, through effective management of your social media and the archiving of it, you're going to be able to hit this transparency and accountability and provide citizens what they want, which is an open, honest, transparent government. Now, the third thing, and those are some crazy shirts too, but the third thing we want to talk about is there used to be a thing called people, process, and technology. And I have my own version of that. So I think the first two things we have to focus on is, do you have a policy in place? I think you'll find throughout this webinar that what Pia will talk about, definitely Anil will hit upon, is the need to have a policy. You got to define what you want to do before you go start doing it. If you don't know what it is you're going to do, anything will happen, and it usually does. Even after the policy, then it's the behavior. Have you trained your folks on it? Now when you've done that, now you get to the technology. That's when we deploy the archiving. That's when you deploy the other nice things that you want to do, the social media platforms, the Facebook, the Twitter. You got to have your policy, your behavior, and then your technology. Now, I want to leave you with somebody who I don't believe has a full grasp yet of social media. This is Lindsay Lohan saying hello, Facebook. This is actually Lindsay. Welcome to my Facebook page as she announces that on Twitter. So that being said, let me introduce our first speaker to you. Pia Salonga currently serves as the marketing and communication specialist for the town of Oro Valley. Now, she works in the town manager's office, and she's got a full plate here, folks, as the graphic designer, photographer, social media manager. Now, during her time in Oro Valley, the town's expanded its social media team and outreach efforts and tripled its size on Facebook and increasing, which I think is very important, the online citizen engagement. Now, she received her Bachelor of Fine Arts in Visual Communications from University of Arizona, and she lives in Tucson, Arizona with her dogs, Kendall and Odie. I think Kindle, I don't know if I read that well. Is that right, Kindle? So that was a small joke there. So, hey, but before we turn it over to Pia, we have our first poll question for everybody. So I'm going to put the question up, leave it there for a little bit. We're going to talk about the answers then, and then I'm going to turn it over to Pia. So the first one, and folks, make sure you weigh in on this. So what is your opinion on social media as a public record? Do you think it's definitely a public record by law? Do you think it might be a record, but our activity isn't worth retaining? Do you think you feel strongly it is not a public record, or you don't know? So again, is it definitely a public record by law? It might be a record, but your activity is not worth retaining. You feel strongly it's not a public record, or you don't know. So let's take a look at those results. Wow. I mean, clearly, 88% of the folks there think that it is definitely a public record by law. 11% say that their activity is not worth retaining. We don't have any ones in the other one, so that's actually pretty good. So, hey, look, Pia, I think we've teed this up really well for you, so the floor is yours.
Thanks, Morgan. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to share our experience with all of you guys here. I'm going to start by giving a background of the town of Oro Valley if you're unfamiliar, if you're not from Arizona. The town of Oro Valley is just a few miles north of Tucson, Arizona. We have a council-manager form of government, and we have a 7-member council. And according to our most recent census, our population is 42,259, and our median age is 49.8. I put that there because Oro Valley right now, it's a fast-developing town, but it's previously seen as a retirement community. So that kind of had a lot to do with why our social media was struggling, why we didn't have engagement in the beginning. But now we're really seeing younger residents come. We have medical biotech campuses that are growing, schools, family-friendly facilities. We have a community center. So our social media has been picking up. So here are our social media platforms. This is actually a card that we hand out. These are our 3 main accounts. We have the town, which I mostly manage that, although I have 2 other staff members that help me with that. We have the Parks and Rec, and we have a police account. Those are our main ones. And we put Facebook and Twitter on here, but we're primarily on Facebook. That's where our demographic is. Twitter we use for media and really monitoring. Just a little bit more background. Before I came to the town, there really was no set social media practice. There was a policy. It was outdated. There was no way to archive the way that they kept record of everything. They were single word documents for tweets, screenshots for Facebook posts, and it just really wasn't consistent. We would just take a screenshot if we thought we would need it. Fast forward to now, we have a whole team, and we're archiving regularly just to make sure that we get everything, and it kind of makes it easier. All right, now to the fun stuff here. So a little bit more information. The town of Oro Valley last year, our council approved the purchase of a country club to convert to a community and recreation center. And that country club purchase included golf courses, it included tennis courts, and a restaurant. So it was a really controversial purchase. And I think what I really needed to focus on was that it wasn't my job to sway residents in one direction or another for this purchase. It was just to educate, to share information, and that was my job for social media, is just to monitor and make sure that the policy that we had in place, that people were adhering to that policy when they were engaging. So we posted that, and naturally we got a lot of feedback. A lot of great feedback, a lot of negative. That negative feedback we left as long as it didn't violate anything. There were no language issues. We left it there, and that's still there. Okay, so we're going to get to this comment, the comment that started everything. This was a gentleman. His comment was, "What an abuse of power by the M4. Quid pro quo at work, everyone." Just some information. M4 really has become almost a derogatory term. It's for the majority 4 council members who voted for the community center. And this gentleman had been really active on several of our accounts. He's, left some negative comments before, and we've left those because they weren't in violation of our policy until this one. And this one happened on a Saturday, and that's the last time I'll stop, that I'll leave my phone alone. But he posted this, and one of our staff members deleted it for the where he was saying that there's an abuse of power, and the purchase was the result of an alleged illegal quid pro quo. So when she deleted that, she had responded to explain why. You can see here, this is a terrible screenshot, I know, but this at the time was all we had. She said, "Your post has been removed. Facebook users who are not respectful of a policy will be blocked from posting to the town's page." So she deleted his comment, and then he went on to comment again and really say the same thing. He said it's an abuse of power. There's enough evidence to support quid pro quo. So after that, and I believe this had been maybe his second or third warning, and then she banned him. So after that, we looked at our disclaimer, which we already had, but we just really wanted to expand on it. Make sure that, we really had the first few sentences here, but we wanted to kind of expand and say, if you don't follow this policy, we can ban you. And this is not, it's the last line here. The site is not intended as a public forum. The town is disseminating information. And we updated that. That was the suggestion of our communications director, and our legal director felt really strongly about updating that and really making it very clear. We posted this on our Facebook and our website. So after this, I was kind of hoping it would just blow over and, everything would go back to normal, but the second, just a couple weeks later, it was in the newspaper, denying free speech or protecting the truth. So it turned into this huge ordeal. This gentleman met with their communications director, our legal director, the town manager. He threatened to file a complaint with ACLU, saying that the town violated his free speech. And one point that I really want to make in this is that social media, even though it's so new for government especially, and really the last thing that I would think is, who's going to file a complaint over Facebook, but really all you need is one person to go to the newspaper, one person to file that record request. And we did. We had a record request for copies of that comment, which we only had the screenshot because we had just started archiving, and it was taking a little while just to sort of get that going. So when our staff member deleted it, she screenshotted it. So that's the only copy we had, and I got to tell you, I was just I was so stressed out over this. And I have one more example of where archiving kind of helped us out. This is another screenshot that a gentleman sent in claiming that he had posted a comment and we censored it. We deleted it. So here's his comment there, and he says, this is Oro Valley again censoring what I posted, promptly deleting what I had said. But if you go back, so if this gentleman were to issue a records request or were to go to the newspaper, I can go to our archives. His comment is right there, and it's still on Facebook, meaning he never posted anything else. I didn't delete anything. No one on my team deleted anything. It hasn't been touched. So that way, at least I know if that ever became an issue again, I'm covered. Okay, so going forward, with everything that happened, really what we learned besides us needing a proper archiving process and an efficient way to do it, is that under the Arizona Public Records Law definition, social media comments may be a public record. It doesn't say if it is, if it isn't. So, our thinking was we need to archive. Just, in case this happens again, we need to be safe. We need to do our due diligence and make sure that we're doing everything we can. There is currently no legal precedent on what social media is. What is that platform? Is it a traditional public forum? And there's no Supreme Court ruling that says, this is what it is and this is what it isn't. So really what the issue is, the state of the law today versus what people think it should be. So everyone on Facebook thinks, it should be. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. So from our legal services director, he actually pulled these 2 court cases. And let me see here. So these are the latest laws that actually apply in Arizona. So it might be different wherever you're from. These are the most recent cases, and they're not even about social media. But in these cases, in the footnotes, they outline the categories of public speech. So the first one outlined is a traditional public forum, which is what most people think, what most people want social media to be. And those are public streets, sidewalks, parks. But traditional forums need to be a physical property. It needs to be owned and controlled by the government. We don't own Facebook. We can't control Facebook. We can't even completely disable all replies. So it's us agreeing to Facebook's policies, Facebook's rules. So right now, this isn't a traditional forum. Designated forum is like a traditional forum. It's what I was told from legal. It's when a public property is opened for public expression, and people are free to express their opinions on anything, which doesn't apply to our Facebook, because our Facebook policy, and it's always stated this, is that your comment must remain on topic. So just by that, we're not a designated forum. Facebook is not a designated forum. So that brings us to the last one, a limited forum, which is what our Facebook is. It's a forum created by the government for certain subjects only. So, and I think the last line here is really important. The government, and with a limited forum, as long as it's neutral, the government may engage in some types of content-based discrimination. So, and they must enforce that policy. So that's really saying you must have a policy, you must enforce it. And so that's really what we're going by. Until the Supreme Court establishes clearly what Facebook is, what Twitter is, Instagram, all those social media platforms, all we can do is make sure that we're doing all of these things to protect ourselves. We keep record of what we do. We have clear guidelines, and we educate people. You educate your residents, you educate your team members so they know what to do, not to do, how to not be in the paper, and that's really how we operate in the town of Oro Valley. And I think I'm done. So, Morgan, back to you.
Hey, Pia, great, and actually, great job. Nothing brings out a good discussion like a good controversy, which is what you just walked through, and that kind of went back through what I originally talked about is got to have a policy. Then you got to tell people what the policy is, train them, like you say, teach people, and then put the technology out there. Great points. Hey, folks, so what we're going to do, if you have any questions, keep hitting that Q&A button. We're having some questions roll in. You can download the presentation at the bottom. Remember, after 48 hours, we will send you a link to this. So now I have the honor of introducing our next speaker, Anil Chawla. Now, Anil is the founder and CEO of ArchiveSocial. And folks, it's always great when you can get the founder, and the person who runs the company, but the person who founded the company to help present. So ArchiveSocial is the public sector's leading provider of technology. What they do is they help government agencies archive and manage risk related to social media. And if after Pia's presentation, if you're not aware that there's risk in social media, I think she clearly demonstrated that. ArchiveSocial partnered with the state of North Carolina in 2010. What they did is they launched the world's first open and interactive archive of social media. Since then, ArchiveSocial has enabled hundreds of other government agencies, including the City of Flagstaff, Arizona there, Pima County, and the world's largest law firm, which would be the U.S. Department of Justice, maintain records of social media for legal protection and public records requirements. Now, the company was selected for the prestigious Code for America Accelerator in 2013. In 2014, one of the top analyst firm, Gartner, recognized them as a 2014 Cool Vendor in Government. And they were just recently honored, congratulations, as a GovTech 100 company earlier this year by Government Technology Magazine. And Anil, as you'll tell by his voice coming up, he's also the co-host of the GovTech Social podcast series. So make sure that you guys go to iTunes, look for that, and have fun. But before we give the floor to Anil, guess what we have? We have yet one more poll. So let's work through this real quickly. So how is your agency currently retaining records of social media? Are you not retaining your records and you rely on the networks such as Pia talked about, like Facebook and Twitter? Are you taking manual captures, screenshots? You're doing copy and paste. Are you using a personal backup tool like Backupify, Social Safe, something like that? Do you have an automated solution for archiving, or are you already a happy ArchiveSocial customer? So you're not retaining your records and you rely on the networks. You take manual captures. You use a personal backup. You have an automated solution, or you're already a happy ArchiveSocial customer. So let's take a look at what the results were. Wow. 63% of you right now are not retaining your records. You rely on the networks. 15% you take manual captures. Nobody's using a personal tool, 8% about automated solutions, and Anil, 13% are a happy ArchiveSocial customer, but I think that top one really says a lot, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. Morgan, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for all of you who have taken time out of your busy Wednesday to join us. We have, it looks like, over 100 organizations tuned in today on this topic, demonstrating what a hot topic this is. And to that point, I want to thank Pia for your participation, but really telling an honest, true story and walking us through the thought process that you dealt with there in Oro Valley. This type of situation where there's controversy, where there is somebody being negative on your social media, this happens on every single social media presence for every government agency. And for you to tell your story and how you dealt with it, and again, the thought process you put into evaluating your policy and reflecting on how you should designate that form, all of that is incredibly helpful. So again, appreciate you sharing that story. What I'd like to do is take it from there on the discussion of not only social media as a public record, but also talk about record keeping and the approach that's being taken by many of you out there, which is currently to rely on Facebook and Twitter, and emphasize the importance of having those records. As Pia said, that peace of mind can only really come when you have those records, and certainly will protect your agency when those records are requested. And that's where I'm going to start. I'm going to start by talking about the requirements in Arizona, but really focusing on real-life examples and case studies where social media has been requested as a record and frankly creates public records, and establish that as a baseline. I know about 12% of you indicated that while you feel that social media is a record, you don't feel that you are creating records on social media. I want to really challenge that today and give you some examples of how social media does, in fact, create records of value. If we can agree that social media content and the communications on social media are valuable to your agency in terms of both public record and in terms of legal protection, Then we need to talk about how you can actually archive that content. Now, in full disclosure, my company, ArchiveSocial, provides a solution, but where I want to spend my time today is giving you some high-level tips and guidance on what to look for in an archiving solution and a record-keeping approach, because as Pia demonstrated, you can have a screenshot, but it may not give you complete peace of mind. So not every record is created equal. So we'll spend some time talking about what you should be thinking about when it comes to the details of record keeping. And of course, I'm here to answer your questions. So please do use that Q&A window, and we'll save some time for those questions at the end. So with that, I want to start by highlighting the public records issue once again. Really encouraging to see 86% of you identify that social media is definitely a public record worth keeping. Now again, not every single thing on social media is a public record, but social media does generate public records, and the information that constitutes record should be maintained per your records requirements. We actually had a really great opportunity last year, about a year ago, to partner with the Secretary of State's office in the state of Arizona and government technology to cover this issue. And I believe that type of guidance that government technology has been at the forefront of has really helped move the audience, not only the folks in Arizona, but the national audience to understanding social media as a public record. Really briefly, I want to touch on just a few slides that were shared at that time by, again, the electronic records archivists and specialists at the Secretary of State's office. And these are their slides. I used it with their permission from the presentation last year. Starting with what defines a record. If you're thinking that the laws in Arizona need to really define social media as a record, the takeaway here is that the laws that are already in place for your Public Records Act, that law and your requirements that have been in place for years and decades actually cover social media already. They're written in a very generic format to cover any type of communication, regardless of physical form. And social media certainly falls under a government communication, regardless of physical form, as long as it's related to the business of your government. Or as one of our colleagues recently said from the Library of Virginia actually said, any evidence of government on your social media creates records. And again, the state of Arizona has echoed very much the same sentiment. They also provided some guidance on how you can determine piece by piece, content by content, what is a record. And these are the types of questions that you can ask. When you post something on social media, is it simply a copy of what you already have elsewhere? Then you probably don't need to retain that social media posting if it's a true exact copy of information elsewhere. But if it's unique in any way, has it created a conversation? Are people commenting on it? Are you clarifying information? Are you rapidly communicating something that isn't actually anywhere else? Then it may be unique, and you do need to retain it and manage it. And according to, again, your record-keeping statutes in Arizona, you are required as a government agency to control and manage your own records. And finally, what I want to leave you with are the folks that are behind this guidance that are the true experts. I'm trying to channel what they shared with us last year. We do have a recording of that presentation that we can share out after today's presentation. But if you want to talk to them directly, Jerry Kirkpatrick was the main speaker. His contact information is here on the slide, and you see the contact information for everybody else as well. So taking that guidance, again, from the state of Arizona on when and how social media does in fact constitute public record, the real question is, when you are communicating on social media, are you at any point generating public records that need to be maintained independently? And here's a broad set of examples that hopefully can connect back to how you're using social media in some way for you to think about. Obviously, a deeply tragic incident for our country occurred once again over the weekend, and the city of Orlando is a partner of ours at ArchiveSocial. Our thoughts and prayers have been with them, but a small silver lining on social media, at least, is the effectiveness of social media in informing the public, keeping folks aware, keeping them safe. We saw this with the Boston Marathon bombings. We saw this with the San Bernardino shootings, and now again in Orlando, that social media becomes a very efficient, effective way for a public agency to keep the public informed. In fact, in Orlando, they made the decision very quick that the Orlando PD would only communicate across Twitter and not use email or phone calls or any other medium to communicate regarding this tragedy and this incident. So this is, again, proof that social media is valuable, but of course, in a circumstance like this, social media will, of course, be generating unique records. Hopefully, you never experience any sort of tragedy of that scale in your community, but every community has emergencies, every community has a crisis situation, and in those situations, of course, your social media is generating unique records that need to be maintained. As we circle around this, if you follow it in clockwise fashion, things can go viral on your social media. I won't go into too much detail on this. You may have seen the duct tape dog incident with this poor dog's mouth duct tape, and it can lead to a community outcry. And again, on social media, people are complaining, they're asking questions, you have to respond to them in some way to ensure that the public isn't completely turned against you. You need to keep them informed. Social media will create those records. On the bottom here, we have an example from my hometown, city of Durham, North Carolina, where we're located. We've heard this happen a few times, actually, where 911 has become unavailable either for everybody or for certain portions of the population. In the city of Durham, they immediately turned to social media and said, here's how you can get in touch with 911. So these smaller scale incidents that still threaten public safety, again, social media plays a huge role in informing the public and protecting them. Social media will generate records. Hopefully you're able to use social media in that fashion when you need to. And then finally, circling around the example on the left with the Austin Code Department, outside of emergencies and public safety situations, every government agency on social media is effectively there to serve the citizens. You're there to communicate with the citizens in some way. Every agency effectively exists to serve the citizens. And so you have to think about that customer service. And here's an example of somebody reporting grass that needs to be mowed on a public sidewalk, and the department responding back with acknowledgement and asking for more information. And the more that you can use social media to gather that information and have that dialogue, the better that you can serve the citizens. And again, you want the ability to use social media in that fashion, but of course it will generate records and you need to cover your public records requirements. Now, those are high-level examples of the types of scenarios that generate records. On the flip side, you might be wondering, well, when is somebody going to ask me for this, and why can't they just go to Twitter and Facebook? One example here from about 2 years ago at this point is out of the city of Seattle, where the Seattle PD uses Twitter to communicate police incidents. And a citizen noticed that sometimes the police incidents were not necessarily showing up on the Twitter feed as he expected they would, or they were showing up quite delayed. And so he asked Seattle PD about this over Twitter. And in fact, over Twitter, he said, I want the archives of all of the tweets available for each of your police beats, and please consider this a Public Records Act request. In other words, this citizen made a public records request for social media using social media. And if that's not a sign of the times, I don't know what is. These are the expectations of our citizens today. And they might sound kind of crazy, but it makes a lot of sense. You are on Twitter, you're on Facebook, you must be there to communicate and have a conversation with your citizens. And they have expectations from you. Now, of course, Seattle said, wait a minute, you can't issue a public records request on Twitter. You have to go fill out a web form. And the citizen went and did that. But they did acknowledge that the request for those Twitter feeds was valid. And when the citizen was interviewed, basically what he said was, I was depending on this information. I really value this service. I valued the fact that Seattle PD was publishing this on Twitter as an easy way to keep up with it. But when it was delayed and it seemed to be missing information, I wanted to really figure out, had they tweeted this out? Is this service reliable or not? And I wanted their version of it, because what I saw on Twitter didn't seem to be accurate anymore. That's a very specific example of someone knowing what they want out of Twitter and Facebook, that those requests are increasing. But it's likely that your agency has yet to receive a specific public records request for social media. What I'd ask you to consider is what kind of public requests you are receiving and whether social media would fall into those requests already. And that's that bottom box. What our customers have figured out is that when they have requests like all notifications of the street closure, or all emails and communications between X person and Y person on Z topic, if you read that carefully, all notifications or all communications would certainly include social media. And so our customers and the agencies that are keeping record have become cognizant of this and are realizing that, in fact, many times social media has some of the most important information, and to truly respond to that public records request, even though it did not specifically ask for Facebook, Twitter, and other social media content, they must include the social media content. And that transitions to me to a set of case studies that you may have never heard of because it wasn't national news, but it comes from agencies that had never had a single issue in terms of public records requests or legal circumstances around social media, but saw it coming. And they decided to be proactive. They decided to not just rely on Facebook and Twitter, but to have some kind of record keeping in place. In this case, these are our customers. And then lo and behold, there was a situation. And I'll cover 3 quick case studies. We have several more that we could share with you offline. But the first comes out of Vineland, New Jersey. This is a situation where the city attorney actually decided that he was concerned about negativity and what citizens might say, to the point that the city attorney advised the police department to start hiding all comments on Facebook. Now, I don't necessarily advocate that approach. In many ways, it's counter to social media, and we'll see what happens in the long term. Hopefully, Vineland's able to move back to a two-way conversation. But when they were hiding these comments from Facebook, they went through a lot of trouble to do that. You can't just click a button and turn on a toggle that says hide everything. You have to really work at it. But they were hiding everything. A citizen actually figured it out. And a citizen said, "You're hiding our stuff on Facebook. You must just have something to hide yourself. I'm going to issue a public records request once a month for everything on Facebook, for all of those comments you're hiding, and I'm going to keep doing that until you change your policy." And the citizen actually followed through, and several months in a row requested that information. The Vineland PD had to manually go through Facebook, take screenshots, and it was a very time-consuming approach, but it was also very error-prone and did not instill a lot of confidence. And so ultimately, they put an archiving system in place. When you are challenged with something like that, and it will happen, you don't want a citizen who's paranoid about what your intentions to bog you down and become a huge distraction. You want in 2 clicks to be able to respond to them, show them that you've covered your bases, you're doing your job, and move on with what's really important for your agency, which is communicating with and serving your citizens. On the other side of the country, another police department, Santa Barbara PD, was following through with a city program around a gun buyback program, obviously a very controversial topic. And when this was posted about on Facebook, it was controversial. There's a lot of comments. There's a lot of communications back and forth. And right around the time of this event actually happening in the city, the NRA, the National Rifle Association, contacted the PD and said, "We want all the records around the communications of this event, including, of course, the social media content." Unfortunately, Santa Barbara PD had just started a free trial of ArchiveSocial 3 weeks before, and in a couple of clicks, we're able to get the information to the NRA with a lot of peace of mind that they had a complete record. But if you talk to this officer, he was really nervous that if he hadn't started that free trial, how he would have gotten that information, what mistakes he would have made. And this is the NRA. This is not just a journalist or an individual. So this is the NRA, who's obviously not very supportive of this program, looking for reasons to cause some friction with this program and potentially bring some legal action. And of course, nothing came out of it in this incident because they were able to respond so easily. Finally, one more case study here in Spokane, Washington. This is really interesting because outside of public records, outside of these police incidents and these controversial topics, if you try to keep it very simple and all you do is post simple information on Facebook about community events, you would hope that nothing would come out of it. But you are a government agency, and unfortunately, there's a lot of risk associated with these types of services. And in Spokane, they were communicating about a kayaking trip, and unfortunately, a young man died on a kayaking trip during some inclement weather. And the lawsuit for this death asked the city to produce all content related to these kayaking trips over the last 2 years. They were looking for what kind of guidance and conditions the city was sharing about when you should go on this trip and when you shouldn't. And they asked for 2 years of content, and in the state of Washington, you only have a few days to respond to a public records request before you get fined. And again, with an archiving solution in place, they were able to quickly respond to that request. But you can imagine not being able to respond to it being a severe problem when, as a government agency, you're required by law, by public records law, to have that information. And so we have government technology has published case studies in all of these situations and many more. We're happy to share with you. And really what I want to do, again, is not scare you away from social media, but show you that you're a government agency, and social media has become so critical and so central to how a government agency communicates that the same types of legal incidents you've always faced will now just touch your social media. And by record keeping and archiving and being proactive, you can respond quickly and efficiently and move on and not let it bring you down, either take up your time or resources or for some reason cause you to shut down your social media. That would be the worst circumstance in our view, given how many benefits social media has for your citizens. So if I've convinced you that record keeping is important, let's talk about how to keep a good record. And one thing that I want to call out is that about 60% of you mentioned that you're relying on Facebook and Twitter today for your records. It's not an unreasonable thing to do, right? Facebook and Twitter is the platform you're using. It's out in the cloud. These are big companies. You trust them. and your information's out there right now. You hope it's still there. That's where most government agencies are today. Again, not unreasonable at the surface, but the reality we have to acknowledge is that Facebook and Twitter have made zero guarantee that they will maintain the information you need to maintain per your governmental requirements. Most specifically, if something is deleted from Facebook or Twitter or YouTube or any other site, once it's deleted, it's gone. And again, there's no guarantee that the networks have provided for you to be able to produce that. In fact, if you go to Facebook's law enforcement site, Facebook says if you want content from us, you can issue a subpoena, but please issue the subpoena before the content is deleted. Again, implying that once it's deleted, we can't help you. So Freedom Archive has decided to study this in more detail because a lot of agencies say, well, we don't delete anything. We try not to delete. We just hide. We decided to study this because we're well aware, in being in the technology space, of this notion of information decay. Information online tends to disappear over time. And we ran a study in the month of January, past January, and we sampled 400 government agencies for 1 month, and we discovered that in 1 month, those 400 agencies lost about 7,800 records from Facebook. Now, the way we do this is our archiving technology automatically detects deletions and marks it in our archives. And so we're able to count this very easily. And 7,800 records lost for 400 customers. That's about 20 a customer in 1 month. It turns out that actually not all 400 customers had deletions, but 3/4 of them did. 281 customers, 3 out of 4 had at least one record deleted. Some had dozens of records deleted. And the most fascinating part about that is that these 7,800 deletions, our 400 customers cannot account for them. They're not aware that these happen because they may have deleted a few things, but mostly they're not deleting, and they weren't involved with the deletions because there is a second side of the equation with social networking. It's the citizens. It's the incoming content. And your citizens, they can delete anything at any time. You may never know it was deleted. Another staff member may delete something, and you may not know about it. And so when it's deleted, it's gone forever. And we're continuing to track this, and the numbers are staggering. We have customers that are having, in fact, over several hundred deletions in a month based on citizens either removing their content or even deleting their entire profiles. So the data is deleting. You have to get it in your control, again, per the Arizona record statutes and the guidance from the Secretary of State. How do you do that, and how do you do it effectively? Social media archiving technology is a technology you want to look into. Again, ArchiveSocial is one vendor in this space. We're not the only one, but you want to look at true archiving. And when you look at archiving, I'm going to give you some guidance on how to think about this. This is how we thought about it at ArchiveSocial. And we started with these 4 factors. The first is the fact that the data is out of your control means that you need to get it as soon as you can. So you need to think about frequency. The longer you wait, the more likely it'll be lost. You need to be comprehensive. This means not only getting your content, what you're posting, but it's that other side of the conversation, the other side of the equation. You need to have both sides of the conversation. You do need to have what's called metadata. I don't have a slide on this in this presentation, but we talk about this a lot. Electronic records, electronic files, they have what's called metadata, which is technical data that's embedded in the record. Something like a tweet actually is not just 140 characters, but a tweet has about 2,000 characters of metadata. And Arizona is one of the 2 states in the country with actual case law on this, where in 2009 there was a case called Lake versus Phoenix. And in that case, the Supreme Court of Arizona ruled that electronic metadata is just as part of the public record as the content itself. In other words, when you look at your tweet, the other 2,000 characters are just as much of a record and part of that Twitter tweet being a public record as the 140 characters that you see on the screen. So you have to be that comprehensive. You have to be authentic. We're talking about legal needs here. You cannot just get by with just simple screenshots or basic tools that are not meant for legal needs, because if you take that record to court and it's challenged, then that record really isn't that useful anymore. It needs to be authentic. You need to be able to stand by your record, and your tweets and your comments need to be able to serve as legal evidence. And context is perhaps the most important and the most overlooked in the archiving industry. Too many vendors talk about the fact that they grab your data and store it. Not enough vendors talk about you actually being able to produce that information. So we'll talk about that here. So let's start with being frequent and comprehensive. My first tip to you is to archive everything you might need. Now, everything on social media is not public record, but in there, certainly, if you're using social media in any fashion with a two-way dialogue, you are generating public records on a daily basis. And so you need to have those records, and the only way to curate out what's record worth keeping and what's of administrative value is to first get it in your control. So you have to archive, you have to capture before you can curate, and you want to look at archiving technology that goes back in time, because again, most of you are not archiving today. So look for archiving technology that you turn on today can actually go back to when your Facebook page started or your Twitter account started and get everything that's still out on the network, so that you're not, losing all of that data. And just a trivia fact for all of you, it's kind of fun, was this is the original website for thefacebook.com in 2004. So you want to go back as far as you can. Hopefully, if you were that much of an early adopter, your archiving technology can go back to 2004. You want to think about your social media sites as more than just one inbox. Facebook is not just about your timeline. Twitter is not just about your own tweets. You have a two-way conversation. You have photo albums. You have private messaging. Even content that you favorite or like could be constituted as endorsement. So you want to archive, again, everything you might need and start with that, and then you can curate out what was worth retaining. And then finally, you want to be as frequent as possible. Look for archiving technology that's near real-time or real-time. At ArchiveSocial, we capture Facebook in real-time and are working towards real-time, as frequent capture as possible for all of their social networks, because you have to get that data before it's lost. I mentioned the metadata. I said it out loud. I wanted to give you a screenshot of it as well. Again, a tweet that has 126 characters, and this example has nearly 2,300 characters of metadata. Again, Arizona being one of the 2 states that has stated by Supreme Court ruling that electronic metadata is just as much a public record as the content itself. So you want to look for an archiving approach that gets that metadata. Screenshotting will not get that metadata. And many tools will maybe throw away that data or convert it. So, for example, you may be using you may look around and find an archiving solution that is really built for email archiving, but they can bring in Facebook and Twitter and put it in the email archive. Be really careful to see if they're throwing away that metadata or they're converting the data, because you don't want any data conversion. You need the authentic record. And if you're looking at archiving, it's not just about Facebook and Twitter, but there are other channels like YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram, and others. And whatever social network you're using, you really want to get that data in native format with full metadata. Look for archiving solutions that get everything in native format so that you have that metadata, especially if you're in Arizona where that ruling has already been taken. One thing that I like to harp on quite a bit is when you think about archiving and capturing data, it's really easy to say, yeah, we'll just grab the data off of Facebook and we'll store it, and we're archiving. And I cannot emphasize enough that it's all about the details. Details, details, details. And here's an example from Facebook. When you use Facebook today, you can comment on top of comments. You can reply to comments. That's one example. Conversations can have comments that go on and on and on, to thousands or tens of thousands of comments that come in at any time. In fact, you could comment on something 6 months after the original post was made. You can embed multimedia not only in the main post, but you can even embed multimedia in the comment and in the comments to the comments. So there's a lot of detail here. And if you look at Twitter, for example, Twitter also has multimedia. Twitter today now allows you to embed photos and videos. But one of the things that Twitter's always had is its use of short URLs. We all use owlies and tiny URLs and bitlies because we have the 140 character limit. But you have to think about that detail as well. How useful is it to archive just the owlie? What does the owlie even mean? You really want to know is what was that tweet referring to? In this case, you want an archiving solution that figures out these details. So in ArchiveSocial's case, we will go look and figure out what did that owlie actually point to and get that information. So look for archiving technology that's all about the details, because the devil is in the details, and ultimately that's really what's going to come up in a situation is, do you have that complete record? Do you have that comprehensive record? I mentioned context being really important. Again, being able to make sense of this information after the fact, maybe several years after the fact. One thing to recognize with social media is that you're dealing with these true living, breathing conversations. Unlike email that's based on independent messages, in social media, you might have one comment that's really what you're looking for. That one comment that's a public records request that a public records request is looking for, or that your legal team needs. And it doesn't help you actually just to find that one comment, because you need the whole conversation. So look for archiving technology that can replay your social media, not just retrieve it, and replay it in the way that appeared on the social network. So in this case, out of ArchiveSocial, find the comment, and then replay the actual Instagram posting, because Instagram has comments too, and be able to hand that over to a legal team so they have the full context. And then finally, a really key recommendation here is that a lot of archiving technologies have been built for financial services needs and other industries where you have compliance officers that love Excel. But Excel isn't that useful for sending off to a reporter or to a citizen or an advocacy group that's making a public records request. You really want to give them a format that's universal, it's easy to read. And doing so not only helps them, it helps you so they don't keep bothering you and challenging you. And so you want to look for an archiving solution that can create PDFs out of your archive that are easy to send off. And not just create the PDFs, but can reconstruct that content. So again, if you were trying to export out of that system one comment, your archiving solution needs to figure out what conversation that comment belongs to, give you that whole conversation in that PDF, and maybe highlight the actual content that's important. And you can see that in this example where on the left we have the 2 pages of the PDF, and only the things that were found in the search are highlighted, but the export gives you everything you need to make sense of it and hopefully reduce the burden on you when you respond. And finally, what I want to wrap up with is Pia talked about finding out about these situations. Sometimes there's a controversy, wishing that she had found out about it sooner. It happened on a Saturday. Archiving technology doesn't have to be this background system that you never think about as a communicator that your IT deals with. In fact, with the social media archive, there are tremendous benefits to a communicator in terms of just managing your risk day to day, being responsive to your citizens, and pulling up information to show to others. And so you can look for archiving technology today that builds upon the archive to give you additional capabilities. In our case, we have started building technology that allows our customers to receive instant alerts on problematic content. So if something may be violating your policy, know about it immediately. The moment it comes into our archive, we'll tell you about it, give you a link to Facebook if you want to go hide it or moderate it, and allow you to set up custom dictionaries and around not only your social media policy, but really anything you care about so that you can respond to that content quickly. And here's an example of what an email alert looks like out of this system. It allows you to just actively manage risk, not just have this passive system. And then also give you tools just to understand the content, up to the point that at this point we're even measuring how positive and negative the reaction is to your content to help you manage risk, as well as help identify situations that generated lots of reaction from your citizens, so that you can talk about this internally and share how social media is working for your agency. So again, an archive has lots of benefits outside of just the legal need to have a record. So with that, I'm going to wrap up here. One last thing that I want to highlight is that our company is entirely focused on public sector, and we really want to be a resource to you, whether you choose to be a customer of ours or not. And on that point, Orlando recently again had this horrible tragedy that we're all still coming to grips with. We're thankful that we've been working with the city of Orlando, and we have the archiving in place for them. They're able to use Twitter as the police department wanted to, but we know that a lot of agencies don't have record keeping today. And if you find yourself in crisis, we do have a pro bono offering in which your agency can sign up for this offering called Crisis Support within days after your crisis, and we'll actually give you all of our technology for free for 30 days to help you get through that crisis, because we want to protect every government agency using social media in crisis. If you have a crisis, use it for free, no cost whatsoever, and we'll help protect you from public records requests or legal situations stemming from that crisis. It's our way of giving back to the industry and, again, trying to be a resource to all of you. So check that out. Have any questions? Here's my contact information, and I'm going to hand back to Morgan so we can look at your questions.
Hey, Neil, great job. And as you guys see, I mean, as we're finding out, to everything from Boston to San Bernardino now to Orlando, social media is valuable not just simply because it provides information, but because sometimes leads are in there and generated out of it. So very timely, obviously. Hey, look, we've just got time for some questions here. So just you folks have been asking, so within the next 48 hours, everybody is going to get a link. It's going to allow you to download to the recording. You're going to be able to share it with your friends. You'll be able to still download at the bottom, download the PDF. And so let's dive into some questions. A couple that we had were really top of mind, Pia, and this one's for you. Have a lot of people asking for your social media policy. Do you have it posted online? Or is there a way for people to reach out and get you to share that social media policy with them?
You know, we have our disclaimer that's on Facebook, that's on our Facebook account and our website. What I'll do is I'll actually upload our full social media policy, and maybe I'll just tweet it out tweet out a link so that people can get that.
Okay. That sounds great. Yeah, because we've had several people ask for that. And actually, Anil, for you as well, we've actually there's been a couple ones that come in that I thought were actually unique. I don't think I've gotten this question before, but we had from Chuck Emmert, City of Phoenix, said he understands archiving services may need the username and password info to archive their data, but he's concerned about releasing his username or password data outside of the organization. What's your response on that?
That's a really valid concern. And before I address that, I do want to mention on the topic of social media policy, we've actually created a social media policy by looking at best practices across the public sector from many cities and other government agencies and put that in a template that's freely available. So we can also send that out to those of you who are interested. On Chuck's question about passwords, it's a very legitimate concern. It's something that we take very seriously. We do not take your user IDs and your passwords. Specifically, we don't take your passwords for your social media sites. There are actually states that have passed laws preventing employers from taking employee social media credentials, given that many of your employees are having to set up these pages. The way our system works is that we actually bring up a pop-up from Facebook that asks you to give us permission. So Facebook serves as that intermediary that says, hey, City of Phoenix, ArchiveSocial wants to archive your data. Is that okay? And then you give Facebook the okay, and then they just give us a permission. So we do not we do not take your credentials. You do not have to share those with us.
Okay, great. Well, and obviously in this day and age, security is always a huge question there. Hey, Pia, this one's for you as well, and kind of your thing, kind of your policy, the way you approach it. We've got Jim Dykins from Bullhead City Fire Department asking, say they have a Facebook page where individuals make comments, but they're not viewable until one of the three administrators unhide it as long as it is appropriate and not derogatory. He's asking if it's illegal. I don't know that you want to weigh in from the legality of it, but going through what you did, do you have any insights, or do you guys hide or unhide comments, in the way that Jim's describing?
As far as whether or not that's illegal, that I'm not sure. The way that we do things, if it's clearly, very clearly in violation of our policy, we can delete it. If there's a comment, I don't know, that one of us is unsure of, or we need to talk to another staff member, we do hide it. That way we can discuss whether or not that is something that we delete. I prefer, and this is just me, I'm more of the better to be safe than sorry, so I usually will hide first. I let everyone comment, just so that people don't bring that up again. People don't think I'm censoring. I just, we encourage dialogue. We do, and it's just when they violate, that's when we delete.
Gotcha.
Morgan, I could chime in on that as well. This is something that comes up quite often. I've never actually seen it in this direction. If I understood correctly from Jim, they've set it up to basically try to catch everything first to prevent anything from hitting the Facebook page, and then they're unhiding anything that is appropriate, so serving as a filter or approval process of sorts. I have not seen that happen, and of course, this is a decision for your agency to make based on your community and your goals with social media. I will say that this idea of government censoring is a really hot button issue that's come up time and time again in our customer base. I mentioned the Vineland situation. We also have other customers where citizens have issued public records requests and legal threats because they feel like they're being censored. And so I'd ask you just to consider that in terms of social media being a real-time dynamic platform, having that step in between may slow down that conversation. I'm not aware of what you're doing being illegal anyway, but it may just impede the productivity of your social media. But certainly, to Pia's point, if it does violate your policy, and you have a clear policy, you can point to it, then being very consistent about it, you are able to, of course, hide the stuff that is violating policy. So going in the opposite direction is usually what we see, where people let everything go on the page and then hide the stuff that's problematic.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually that kind of leads into a good question, another one that I haven't seen in a long time. Mary McGuire, City of Boca Raton. Apparently the people in Florida want to see what the desert looked like. But she was asking about edited, because we know that we've talked about private messages, and we had a question about that. Those are captured, so don't worry about that. That's captured here. But she's asking about edited posts, both from the user and the other users, from the city or the government entity and the other users. Does the ArchiveSocial capture edited comments?
That's a really great question, Mary. So basically, the social networks for a long time didn't support edits, and then over time they've allowed you to edit your comments and edit your posts. And one of the key enablers for archiving is that the social networks have to make that data available. They have to make that data available for vendors like ArchiveSocial to capture that in native format. And not every social network allows editing, but the ones that have started to do it have slowly rolled out capabilities for you to detect edits. So this is an emerging challenge for all archiving vendors. At ArchiveSocial, being a company that focuses exclusively on social media archiving, this has been a top-of-mind issue for us. What we'll do today is capture the original version of the record. We can capture things like the fact that the record was deleted and so forth. But certain edits are not quite available yet, but we are at the forefront of this issue, working towards technology. We hope by the end of the year that we'll be capturing edits across all networks.
Yeah, and folks, look, there we have a great answer. We have so much more things to get to, but we have to be respectful of your time. Look, I wish we could answer all of the questions, but look, this obviously is one that generates lots of discussion, lots of controversy. Social media is a new thing, so anytime there's something new, it takes a while for us to really wrap our arms around it and figure this out. But look, folks, we're very close to the end right now. So what I want to do, first of all, is thank our speakers. Thank Pia for coming on. Great job, Pia, as well as you and Neil. Not only is Neil the speaker, but ArchiveSocial is actually one of the folks who's helped put this on. So we always rely on our industry partners to help us put these things on. Special thanks to them for bringing this. Remember now, fill out the survey. It's going to pop up here at the end. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Make sure that you get feedback. This is how we improve these things. Download, if you want to download the PDF, it's down at the bottom. But more importantly than anything else, we want to say thank you today for joining us. This will be available at govtech.com/webinars. It will be available on demand. If you have any questions, reach out to me as well. But otherwise than that, thank you, folks, for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on another government technology webinar. Everybody have a great day.